Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where pharmacists can fill your pet's prescriptions, helping you pamper and protect your pet with pills, peanut butter, toys, and treats. Stop into the store today or visit Safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
This week marks 100 days since Trump took office. It seems like everyone's talking about this milestone, so I wanted you to know that in coming episodes, you will hear about how his administration is impacting Colorado. For now, though, happy Monday, and let's get to the news. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, an unusual showdown at the state capitol over social media.
This veto override was a rare rebuke from the legislature against the governor.
Also, people with disabilities have a right to live at home.
I have dreams for Wesley's future, like to get married.
How a proposed state law could support those dreams and protect their rights. Then, what Xcel Energy promises to do to try and avoid sparking a wildfire.
And World War II veterans whose stories you haven't heard.
There's a lot of work, a lot of sadness. No one thanked us for our service.
They'll finally get recognition this week.
It's Monday, April 28th. Here's the news in Colorado today. It's taking an extremely rare move to get new regulations on social media companies in Colorado. Governor Jared Polis vetoed lawmakers' plan to require Instagram, Snapchat, etc. to better police accounts that do illegal things, like selling guns or exploiting minors. Then, on Friday, for the first time in almost 15 years, state senators overrode the governor's veto. CPR's Benta Berkland is here with this update. Benta, why did Polis veto the bill in the first place?
Polis vetoed the bill because he said while it has good intentions, he thinks it fails to guarantee the safety of minors or adults. He said it erodes privacy, freedom, innovation, hurts vulnerable people, and potentially subjects all Coloradans to stifling and unwarranted scrutiny of their online protected speech. He also doesn't like that it mandates a private company to investigate and impose the government's chosen penalty of permanently deplatforming a user.
Okay, so then why did lawmakers override it, and what do they hope will come out of it?
The Senate overrode the veto by a large margin. It does require a 2/3 vote, and that vote was 29-6. It passed with no debate, just brief comments from the two main sponsors, a Republican and a Democrat. They said it's time to dig deep and find the courage and conviction to protect children in the state of Colorado. The Democratic sponsor said the bill gives Colorado the tools to help remove predators and traffickers from using social media to harm children. What's interesting about this is it has high-profile backers and supporters, even within high-level Democratic politics. So you have the Attorney General, Phil Weiser, supporting the bill, Governor Polis, a strong opponent. And this veto override was a rare rebuke from the legislature against the governor. The last veto override in Colorado was in 2011, and it was about a budget spending request.
CPR's Benta Berkland. The House also needs to vote on the veto override, which could happen as early as today. You can read more of Benta's reporting at the link in our show notes.
For decades, Americans with disabilities have had the choice to live and get care at home, which is a big change from how it used to be when people were often sent to institutions. The right is protected now by a landmark Supreme Court ruling in 1999. But a few things have happened recently that could make those protections vulnerable. CPR's Stephanie Wolf is here to tell us about an effort at the state capitol to shore up freedoms for people with disabilities. A bill cleared the Senate on Friday. Hi, Steph.
Hello.
So for some context here, let's go back a little. Can you talk about what life was like for many Americans with disabilities before this 1999 Supreme Court ruling?
Yes, and to do that, I want to introduce you to Molly Kirkham. She's a legislative policy advocate for the Arc of Colorado, who's advocating for the bill that lawmakers are considering.
My big thing is to make good change and to break down stigma about people with disabilities.
So Kirkham has a rare chromosomal anomaly condition. She lives at her family home in Golden. But she says her great-aunt Kippy did not have that same choice and lived in an institution from the age of 13 to 29. Kirkham grew up hearing stories about her great-aunt's experiences there. In Kirkham's view, not having the right of choosing where to live and get care, that was a kind of segregation.
And just know that institutions were not the right options because it just hid people away instead of letting people embrace disabilities and learn how to live with each other.
What is Kirkham hoping that the state legislature can do now?
Well, she and many other advocates and members of Colorado's disability community are urging lawmakers to make it state law to help people live independently instead of just relying on federal precedent on this issue. So those pushing for this include Carson Covey, who represented Family Voices Colorado when he testified this month during a Senate committee hearing. He uses a device to help him communicate.
The thought of being placed in any form of institutionalized setting is unimaginable to me, and I have yet to meet anyone who would choose such an environment over community integration.
Lawmakers also heard from Waverly Bowser, whose 13-year-old brother, Wesley, has had several disabilities since he was a baby.
Wesley has taught me to be brave and stay strong even in the hard times. I have dreams for Wesley's future, like to get married, to feel included, and to have good things to happen to him, like eating marshmallow fluff and having pets. My dreams can come true with the help of this bill to guarantee Wesley's right to live at home.
Everybody needs more marshmallow fluff in their lives.
Absolutely.
That is compelling testimony, but what exactly can the state do? How can it guarantee protections that came from a Supreme Court ruling?
So this 1999 Supreme Court ruling called Olmstead found that unnecessarily keeping a person with a disability in a long-term care facility is discrimination under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it mandates that states have these community integration plans. These plans are meant to help people with disabilities transition out of long-term care institutions and back into the community and to continue to be able to live independently. Colorado hasn't updated its plan in more than a decade, and backers of this bill say the current plan is simply too vague.
So one important thing then that the state can do is update and clarify its plan.
That's right. So this new legislation would require the state to research and develop a new community integration plan by September 2028.
Steph, we mentioned that these protections are vulnerable right now. Can you explain that?
I think the first thing is that Colorado actually got in trouble with the U.S. Justice Department in recent years for allegedly not meeting its obligations under Olmstead. Second, they're worried that Olmstead itself might be at risk or weakened after recent Supreme Court rulings that overturned other federal precedent.
The bill that's advancing in the legislature now, will it pass?
This bill has a lot of bipartisan support, both in the House and the Senate. So it cleared the House recently. That doesn't mean it's a lock. When I reached out to Governor Jarrett Polis's office, a spokesperson said the governor will take a close look to, quote, ensure that there are not unfunded liabilities if and when the bill reaches his desk.
So we'll continue to watch for the governor's action on this as well. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you.
Xcel Energy says it'll commit nearly $2 billion to wildfire management in Colorado. That's as the company is fending off hundreds of lawsuits for its alleged role in sparking the Marshall Fire, the most destructive in state history. CPR's Ishan Thakur is reporting the story. Ishan, how did this new proposal come about?
So in June 2024, Xcel submitted a strategy to prevent wildfires from being sparked by its own equipment. So for the past many months, Boulder, environmental groups, and other companies have been negotiating with Xcel about how much it should cost and what should be in the plan. And last week, they all came to an agreement. Here's Joseph Pereira. He works for the state agency that advocates on behalf of utility customers.
What is unique about this settlement and about the outcome here is that the adopted approach reduces risk for our communities and for the company, but also ensures that profits are secondary to safety.
And what Pereira means there is that Xcel will be making less profits off an investment like this, and that's a big deal.
In this new plan, does it say specifically what they'll do to improve safety?
Xcel will put transmission lines underground and replace aging infrastructure, and also they have a plan to use AI cameras to detect ignitions. So these are all newer techniques, and they're really expensive when you compare them to the status quo, which is basically clearing out brush and vegetation around equipment. Another big issue this plan tackles is how the company will let customers know about precautionary blackouts.
That's been a new strategy Xcel tried last year in Colorado to basically cut the power when super dangerous conditions are predicted.
Right. So last April, Xcel shut off electricity for around 55,000 people across the Front Range. And that caught a lot of residents by surprise. Xcel now says it'll notify customers about future shutoffs and prioritize bringing power back to what it calls critical customers.
Ishan, $2 billion certainly sounds like a lot of money. Is it? Is this a significant amount?
It's very significant. So the plan is around 4 times the cost of Xcel's original 2020 wildfire plan, and it covers twice the geographic area. But a lot has happened since 2020. As we mentioned earlier, really destructive fires like the Marshall Fire showed that fast fires can cause billions in damages. And like we talked about last week, Bazzi, we've heard officials say that Colorado no longer has a wildfire season. They're now saying the risk is a year round. That means that utilities and municipalities have to invest a lot more in mitigation.
One more question many people may have: with all of this additional expense, how will this affect our bills?
So the plan still has to be approved by regulators. But if it ultimately does go through, you're probably going to pay a little bit more every month. Customers aren't going to foot the whole bill, though. So the company at first estimated that by the end of 2027, average residential bills would go up by around $9 a month. Now, this agreement proposes to pay for the plan in a different way, so it's likely that your bill will go up by a little bit less, but we're not entirely sure how much.
Ishan Thakur, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Imagine realizing that your grandmother isn't the person you thought she was. A woman from Loveland is having that experience. She's heading to Washington, D.C. tomorrow because the World War II unit her grandmother was a part of is finally getting recognized. Tara Hunter was surprised to learn how much of her grandmother, Felicia Levon Johnson's life, was hidden, but now will be celebrated with a Congressional Gold Medal.
When I was little, my parents both worked, so I would spend the week at my grandmother and great-grandmother's house.
Hunter remembers Johnson as a loving and patient woman who hated the limelight. Johnson always challenged herself. She was eager to learn new things and would take classes to continue her education.
So I actually have a table that she refinished as a part of that program.
Hunter only learned of her grandmother's contribution to U.S. history when her story was honored at a monument in Fort Leavenworth, and her accomplishments with the all-female 6,888th Army Battalion was the subject of a new movie, The 6,888.
The 6,888 Postal Battalion Directory was the only all-black and women of color battalion in Europe during World War II.
All these dedications, they happened after her death. That despite that the work from the 6,888 Army Battalion was key to Allied victory in World War II. When Johnson joined the battalion, there was a backlog of over 17 million pieces of mail, which they cleared up in 90 days. They managed to get mail to and from troops on the front line, boosting the morale of the fighting soldiers. Hunter thinks of how significant her grandma's role in the war was, given how words can lift you and give you the confidence you need to face difficult situations.
In my early 20s, I had a friend who was being deployed overseas. And so I was like, yeah, we'll keep in touch. I'll send you emails. And he told me, he was like, no, I need actual letters. Long before I knew about what was going on with my grandmother, that was impressed upon me about how significant that was.
But when the women of the 6,888 Battalion arrived home to the U.S., there wasn't a parade or really any mention of what they had achieved.
The women of the 6,888 and others, they're the ones who built this country. They sacrificed of themselves. They gave of themselves, many of them freely. because they believed in the American ideology.
For more on this conversation, you can check out the Colorado Matters podcast. The link is in our show notes. Additional reporting for today's show came from CPR's Ryan Warner. Thank you for listening to Colorado Today, and thank you for your support of independent local news. You can find the link to donate in our show notes. Be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where teachers can save 5% every day. Download the Safeway app and verify your teacher status for exclusive offers and discounts. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.